Hey, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is Liz joining you as usual from Central Virginia and the unceded lands of the Monacan Nation. And I'm so glad that you're here with me today, as always. Listen up. If you want to learn about the sacred feminine, first of all, you're in the right place. You've got a lot of ways you can do that with me. Go over to hometoher.com and you can see some of the stuff I've got going on. I've got a year-long book club focusing on Indigenous and global women's voices. I've got events coming up, and you'll find links there to the podcast, all the past episodes, on-demand classes I'm teaching, all that good stuff, and also information about my book, Home to Her, Walking the Transformative Path of the Sacred Feminine. And today we've got an interstitial episode, and if you haven't tuned into one of these yet, here's what I'm doing with these. I'm planning these as spaces in between, and these will come out around or on the new moon, depending on how organized I am. And interstitial really just refers to those spaces in between. And so these are the reflections that I've been sitting with in between interviews and episodes with other people that I like to bring on. And for this interstitial episode, there's no way I can avoid talking about this upswell of rage that I'm seeing among women and experiencing in myself about the Epstein files. There's so much to be mad about, right? Let's first just acknowledge that. It's almost hard to figure out where to channel that energy, but this one has really, it's hit me hard. And I first want to say that this rage is not new to me. I've been journeying with this for a long time now, long before all of this came to the collective forefront. And that's because when you have studied the wisdom in the her story of the sacred feminine for as long as I have, there is no way to avoid the truth that everything in our culture, and I mean every single thing, is built upon the suppression of women's voices and women's bodies. And it has been for thousands of years. And the insidiousness of it is that women, particularly here and in the US and in other Western cultures, have gained legitimate footholds in patriarchal structures and systems. This is true. We have more documented freedoms and resources than possibly at any other time in recorded history. That is, if we are focusing on the colonized story of Western civilization and progress. But we've gained those footholds in systems that do not really care about our bodies or our lived experiences. And this is why I feel like a broken record sometimes when I repeat over and over again that if you are a woman, there is nothing that is supposedly supporting you in our culture that was built with your participation and input. Nothing. Your experience wasn't irrelevant. It was non-existent. And when we are getting educated in that same system, amassing resources in that system, and yes, even receiving some comforts and benefits from that system, we can fool ourselves into thinking that we are safely and fairly represented by it. We're not. And the Epstein files demonstrate this, which is why you see politicians in them from both parties, prominent doctors, philosophers, scientists, spiritual thinkers, academics. You are welcome in the system if you adapt to it and conform to it, but you are not guaranteed respect, safety, or protection in that system because it was inherently built without the acknowledgement of your basic humanity. And that has never been named, let alone repaired or attempted to be repaired. Never. And you know what's interesting? I have known this for so long, so long. I have journeyed with rage like you wouldn't believe, or maybe you would. And I will have long periods of time when I can make my peace with it. But because the problem doesn't go away, the rage doesn't really go away. The genuine power of emotion is one of the 6 aspects of feminine power that I talk about. And knowing the historical record is really, really useful in this regard because it shows us that the rage of goddesses is often invoked by deep, profound injustice and disrespect of humanity. And when it shows up, it often shows up in a scorched earth, burn it all down kind of way, which is how I think a lot of women are feeling right now. So here's what I'd say to you. If you're feeling rage, you don't have to make your peace with it. You don't have to make it go away. But what do we do? What do we actually do? Because just sitting with it and letting it burn us up isn't particularly helpful. So I want to break down 5 steps I think each of us can take from this place of rage and frustration at the failure of every aspect of our system to protect girls and women. But even before I do that, I want to say this to you. This is a long game we're playing here. The sacred feminine works in deep time. She works in cycles that are much longer than the span of a single human life. So while that could seem frustrating, it's also liberating because it means your individual actions right now, whatever they are, they matter. and they're enough. The choices you make matter. And if we are showing up the best way we know how, we can trust in another aspect of feminine power, the power of emergence, to let it all unfold as it should. We're playing our part, and that's enough. All right. So here we go. First thing we can do, tell yourself the truth. And I know, stick with me because I'm shifting here from talking about something external, the Epstein files, to talking about something internal. But hang with me. You can take a good, truthful look at where and how you are perhaps suppressing and holding back your truth to uphold societal and work norms that you didn't create and that feel in conflict with you and your needs and your values. And this matters because, as I said, all of these norms have been created without the needs or perspectives of women. So a key way that they can keep going is by us trying to conform to them, by silencing our viewpoints and modeling ourselves to be in alignment with the systems and structures around us. And first, I want to say that this can be a really important survival strategy. Sometimes we have to do that to survive. Sometimes I think we're also operating from a place of fear and past experiences that might be informing the way we're looking at that situation. So maybe we don't have to respond that way in this situation, but we're afraid, so we think we do. So what I'm saying here is I'm not asking you to take any particular step right now. I'm just asking you to look truthfully at your life. Are you holding back in particular ways to keep the peace, to keep the status quo? And honestly, even if your initial reaction is, I'm not doing that, just hang with it. Hang with it for a bit. I think women are so conditioned to be accommodating that a lot of times we might not even know we're doing this. So that's the first one. Second question would be, if I can identify ways that I'm doing this, what is it costing me to continue to suppress and hold myself back to stay in alignment in this particular situation? And I would pay really close attention to situations and relationships that take up a vast amount of your time and energy on any given day, which for most of us is going to be work situations, intimate relationships, and family relationships. What is it costing me to stay in this arrangement as it is currently? Do I feel anxious? Do I have suppressed anger? Do I feel depressed? Do I feel alone? Again, these are just questions to be with. There's nothing specifically that you have to do here. And there is also a time and a place to ask the question, what am I gaining in these situations too? It's important because if you're staying, you're probably getting something out of it, even if it's uncomfortable. But I'd love for you to stay with this question. What is it costing me? And you know what? You might even be tempted to look at this from a different lens. What is it costing my kids if you have kids? Or my family or my community, and all of that's important. But your life is just as valuable as any other life, which is why I really would encourage you to center yourself in this inquiry. Practice centering yourself in your life because you matter. The third, and I want you to hang with me on this one. This is a tough one for me to even sit with, but give the men in your life some grace. Please note that I did not say give men a pass. I used the word grace very intentionally, and this particular area is something I've had to work hard at for years. I'm hearing this with women specifically related to the Epstein files and the depth of complicity, this raw anger and hurt that men who claim to love us cannot seem to muster the same level of outrage or even really draw their attention to it. And what do we do with this? If you're feeling this way, I really do understand this. And as I said, I've been doing this work for a long time. So I want to tell you a story related to this before I get back to this point. Last year, I started doing some coaching work with a male friend who seemed really interested in learning more about the sacred feminine. And y'all, there is something that sparks in me that gets really excited when men show up interested in learning about this because I want that. I want them to care. So this was a coaching exchange. He had recently become a certified coach, and I was building my own sacred feminine mentoring and coaching work. And so we were doing an exchange. He's working with me, I'm working with him. And I love doing this work with him. And it really seemed to resonate with him. And for a time there, I felt like, this is going great. He would leave me these wonderful voice texts about some of the experiences and openings he was having with the sacred feminine, how it was changing its life. And I was really excited for him. And he was really great at encouraging me too. And then last summer, I went to a TEDx event, one of these big speaking events. Maybe you've heard of them. Surely you've heard of TED Talks, TEDx, or smaller events that are offshoot productions and are pretty polished. And this one was called The Audacity of She. It was in Atlanta. And so it's all women speakers, which I thought was great. And it was almost all women of color, which I also thought was amazing. Like, what a great opportunity for me to get to learn from these women whose voices are often not prioritized in our culture. So I went with a couple of friends, female friends, and it really was cool to be there. These women, they had worked hard. They were polished and incredible at owning the stage. They had really, really powerful life trajectory stories and stories about the success that they had achieved, me being me, and so kind of steeped in awareness around patriarchy, I did notice that their stories all seem to follow a very similar trajectory about facing adversity in a system that didn't value them and how they achieved success within it. Those are the success stories we like. But of course, I see the patriarchal lens in everything. Like, why aren't we building better systems so these incredible, amazing women don't have to climb these hurdles and have amazing stories of overcoming adversity in the first place? Why can't we just have their leadership? Anyway, so at the end, all the women get up, they take a bow, and then their speaking coaches are invited on stage because they worked for months to prepare for these things. And there's 3 of them, 3 speaking coaches, and they're all men coaching women at an event called The Audacity of She. And then I look around at the audience, which I had noticed with some optimism had a handful of men in the room, and I kind of slowly realized that the only men that are there are directly connected to the women speakers. Men are coaching these incredible women, and even still, men aren't showing up to hear from them. Well, fast forward a few weeks, and I'm talking to my coaching exchange friend, asking for some feedback on his experience working with me, and he gave me some really good feedback. And in the course of our conversation, I shared that story with him about being at this TEDx event, and I'm sharing it kind of how I recounted it here with this. I don't know how I sound to you, but, for me, it was kind of a tone of bemused exasperation and frustration because this is just also common for women. This isn't anything new. And after I finished telling him this, he says, I need to give you some honest feedback. You sound angry. And if I'm being really honest, I picked up that tone in your book too. And I'm like, wow, this kind of took me aback. First of all, because I wasn't angry, but I say, well, we have plenty to be angry about. Even as I'm noticing in my body that I actually wasn't that angry because this is such a common experience. Well, men don't want to join up with another angry cause, he tells me. And then he says, let it go in love. Well, listen up. Now I'm angry. And I tell him that as a father of daughters, I'm pretty disappointed in him that he doesn't care more, which he really didn't like. And that was basically the last time I talked to him. It was painful. It was a painful ending. And I kind of stewed on this for months. But the thing that I have questioned more recently is my expectations of him in telling him that story. Because I had coached him on the sacred feminine, I expected him to be able to see what to me is very obvious. Her absence and her suppression has had a huge impact on women's lived experiences. But you know what? Most women aren't even aware of this. This is what I was talking about in the beginning. It's insidious. We've achieved some success in the West, at least in these systems, so we don't even know sometimes. And this is why it takes a huge cataclysmic event like the Epstein files to bring it to us. And to realize that the experiences so many of us have had with unwanted attention and sexual harassment and assault is actually pretty fucking common and completely protected by ruling classes and systems that don't care. In my case, it took a wild opening spiritual experience to fully shake me awake to all of this. So he's not been invited into anything like that. And most men haven't. And I would go one step farther to say most men are not invited into empathy. I'm raising a boy child here, and I obviously do the best with this that I can. But what I see in popular culture is that boys and men are indoctrinated into being individual heroes. They're supposed to make quick decisions and act with authority and be leaders. And they don't get there by necessarily considering the experiences of others. I also think of the Black writer W.E.B. Du Bois, who coined the term double consciousness, which means that wherever you are in the social hierarchy on that ladder, you can see your position on the ladder and above you, but it's really hard to see below you. Well, men built the ladder. They built the systems and the structures to benefit men, white men to be specific. So they're sitting at the top of the ladder, which requires genuine effort to look down and realize there are a lot of people below them. And if they built the ladder and they're kind of controlling the stories, there's nothing that's actually asking them to do that. And there's very little social incentive for them to do that. All of this is to say, it probably wasn't reasonable for me to expect that my coaching friend could see any of this as quickly or as easily as I can. And it does not give him a pass. But it also doesn't set unrealistic expectations primarily for me, but also for him. And so I think this applies to what we're seeing with the Epstein files too. I don't think men have any clue about the depth of a lot of women's pain around all of this for the same reason. That does not mean they get a pass. But there's another thing that I'm really curious about in myself, using that coaching friend as an example. And that is what I was looking for in sharing that story with him in the first place. And if I'm being really honest, I think there was an undercurrent of seeking permission. If he met me in my frustration and annoyance, then maybe my perspective was valid. And I am genuinely curious about this for myself and for other women as well, particularly around this situation with the Epstein files. There's a way in which, by looking at men in male-built structures and asking them to see us and see our pain as valid, that we are also asking their permissions for our lives and our experiences to matter to them. We are asking for recognition in a system whose very existence hinges on the invisibility of our authentic voices and needs. And in doing so, I think we are validating systems that don't deserve to be validated. So by giving men grace, I am not giving them a pass. If anything, what I'm saying is I'm envisioning a sidestep of any kind of power or authority I might vest in them to shape my perspective. What I'm saying is, men, I'm not looking for your permission or your agreement to know how horrific this is. I know it's horrific. I'm tired of waiting for you to be aware of this. It doesn't feel like my job to educate you to this. And at the moment, I am more interested in investing my time, energy, and resources in places besides trying to educate men or convince them of allyship. That doesn't feel like my work in this moment. And I can imagine a lot of women saying, like, man, I have been trying to call men into allyship forever, and they're not listening. I hear you. So this leads me to the fourth thing that I think we can do. Start to seriously, and I mean it, seriously divest yourself of male authority in whatever way you can, large or small. This can look a lot of ways, but one easy place to start is by deciding who you are going to let shape your understanding of the world. Start easy by looking at the kind of entertainment you consume. Who's writing it? If it's visual, who's directing it? Who's producing it? What roles are female characters playing? Who's telling their stories? If you are being exposed to any kind of ideas about leadership or management theories at work, investigate where they come from. That 360 performance review, by the way, was developed by a man. The backbone of all coaching models, all developed by men. The field of psychology was developed by men. Pretty much all religious material that you're going to find developed by men. Many spiritual and meditation teachers are men. So where are you being taught about life, priorities in life, and worldviews by men? And I used to say divest from men who specifically have not shown an interest in advocating for women, but there are so few that have authentically done that and that are doing that I don't even add that qualifier now. And you know what? Maybe you don't have to stop forever, but maybe give yourself a break. And I would apply this to family members, men whose opinions and approval you've sought. Pause. You don't need it. You don't need it. Give yourself a break. It doesn't have to be forever, but make some space for your own authentic voice to come through and for women to be your teachers and your allies and your thought partners if you haven't done that already. And this leads me to the fifth thing you can do. Invest your time, your resources, your energy in women's voices, leadership, projects, and her story. And there are so many ways that you can do this. One obvious way that I'm a huge fan of is learning women's her story and sacred stories, especially the clues we can find that tell us of perspectives, pre-patriarchal perspectives, which is, of course, what my work is all about. And of course, you can find this in my book, and I name so many women that you can learn from in there. I have lots of resources. And likewise, there are more than 100 episodes of this podcast at this point, going back 5 years, that you can listen to that will give you an idea of the sacred feminine, but also how women are showing up differently when she shows up in their lives. And this is also what I'm doing with my book club, A Year of Inspiring Women, which is focusing primarily on Indigenous, global, and non-white women's voices. So ideally, we can try to learn from women who are not as deeply enmeshed with these systems as we are. Although really most of us are to one degree or another. We can't escape it. And you don't have to do this with me. I mean, this is my life's calling, but there are so many women's voices that you can learn from. And I am wanting to add a caveat here that we are all enmeshed in these patriarchal systems, and that includes me too. We're all shaped by it. There's no getting around that. So you're probably going to need to give women some grace too. And so what I mean by that is that women who have been elevated within patriarchal culture and society, they're showing up to those systems as being in alignment with them, if that makes sense. Whether or not they are, they might just be code switching to try and get their voices out there, but they are showing up in a way that's pleasing to those systems. So sometimes the voices that are not at the very top are the ones that you're going to want to listen to, if you can find them, and sometimes you have to work for it. But whatever women that you're learning from, you probably need to give them some grace too. And this is why prioritizing your own inner wisdom is really, really important. Listen inside. Most of us don't do that enough, or we're afraid to trust it. So that's a key thing, is to really practice this. All right, I want to leave you with a final vision that I keep turning to. It's this truth that women at this point in our society control $60 trillion in global assets. $60 trillion. We've succeeded in this system, y'all. Many women have. And as we all know, money talks in this system. I think we have more power than we realize, even if I don't fully know what that means just yet, or if you don't know how to exercise it just yet. But one of the keys to accessing this power is working collaboratively. And so my vision is that we stop asking for permission to be seen and heard and respected within systems and structures that have thrived on our suppression. We take our money, we take our wisdom, we take our insights, we take our ability to see up the ladder, because this is a key part of what Du Bois talked about. If we're below where men are on that hierarchical ladder, it's really hard for us to see down. We have to go down and listen to the women of color, if you're white, that are below us so that we learn. But we can see really easily above us. We know because men have created that world. We understand. So we know how to play in that world. So we take all of our wisdom, our insight, our understanding of those systems, and we start building something new. And yes, that is a somewhat vague vision at the moment. But if we hang with it, I believe we can find a different way, that it can emerge for us bit by bit. And that's my dream. Okay, that's what I've got for you right now. And more than anything, I just want you to know I'm here with you. I'm crying with you. I'm raging with you. I'm hurting with you, not just over the Epstein files, but over every fucking thing that's been happening in our world. It's terrifying. It's horrifying. I'm here with you. I would love it if you would reach out with your thoughts and reflections. I'll be back on or around the full moon with another interview with another amazing woman. And until next time, I hope you take such good care of yourselves, and I'll be with you again soon.